The NSE has just closed. 2.6 million shares have been traded in equity. 1.28 million shares have been traded on Safaricom. The rest of the counters were moderately quiet and nothing much more to report with regards to corporate actions. Just before we took the break, we were looking at the efficacy of the central bank rate as a means of signaling to the market the proper pricing of money in this economy. And what more do we need to see there? Mr. George Bodo is a director at Callstreet Research and Analytics, and he was just giving us an evaluation of what he expects. Before we went for the meeting, you said the first thing that you want to see coming out of the MPC meetings is the minutes. You want to understand what are the members thinking, what are their considerations, what are the risk factors that they're putting into the decision that they're making. Then we moved ahead and we said, okay, fine. Over and above that, you are saying that the central bank needs to be actively involved in not just saying the GDP, rather the economic growth estimates, but actually participating actively in this conversation. Do elaborate this for us?
Yeah, what I was saying is that I think that it's not just enough to give projections, and especially in a scenario where private sector credit growth is stunted. Like, for instance, now we were talking about private sector credit growth under 10%. I think in the press communique last week, they said it's just slightly above 6% year on year as of June, which is quite good compared to a growth which was, I mean, I think about 2 years ago, a year ago, it was just 2%. You could say there's some traction there, but still, I think they could actually do more to stimulate private sector credit growth, because you realize this economy is, to a large extent, is credit driven. Okay, so if this economy is credit driven, let me now take you to the element of demonetization. What does that mean? Because now we've actually come to the deadline. The deadline is today, and the central bank has been collecting old 1,000 notes and releasing new notes into the economy. How do we look at that? Yeah, it's a very interesting, and I think this will have the results will also contribute to monetary policy decision making. Okay. There are about there are about just about 220 thereabout. Talking about the 1,000 shilling currency note that is being targeted. Actually, just to update your viewers, is that it's actually the deadline falls for the 1,000 shillings currency notes. Yes, it's for the 1,000. But broadly speaking, is that why are we here? How did we end up here? Is that we are complying with the constitutional requirement. Yes, we are. Actually, we are late on it. We were supposed to have complied way back, but there's this is what I call an addendum to that compliance. The central bank set a deadline for the 1,000 shilling currency notes today. I think that if the numbers come in below previously stated a volume of 1,000 shilling currency note, then that's big. That should be big news. All right. That means the central bank over this time has been overstating the amount of. So we need to actually be looking out for the figures of how many notes have been collected. Yes. Vis-a-vis how many notes they thought were in circulation. Yes, because the numbers, as June said, they were about just slightly above 200 million 1,000 shillings currency notes in circulation. Okay. Yes, which is the largest, by the way, because the next denomination, which is 500 shillings, are just 16 million. So 1,000 shillings is actually the largest. Okay. If you're saying that tomorrow they announce the results and say, well, we only had 100 million. I like the statement, announce the results. It sounds like it's a political countdown. So we are doing the 1,000 shilling countdown. Okay. If tomorrow they announce. The governor is having a press conference on Wednesday. Yes, he's having and if he comes up and says, look, we're able to collect only 100 million notes. Yes. Well, they were only able to return back 100 million notes. Then that has a huge, profound impact on monetary policy. What that means is that the previous volume in circulation has been overstated. Okay. And consequently, inflation is understated. Okay. Yes. But hold on. Is it overstated? Because what happens if I do not bring my money back? Yes. It could actually be there, only that I've just not submitted it back. No, I don't believe that someone holding your hard-earned 10,000 shillings, you would refuse to take it back to the bank. Key question. Yes. Hard-earned. It's hard-earned, yes. If it's not? If it's not, and by the way, I had this conversation with someone in the morning. Yeah. The people that we think are actually part of the illicit and money laundering, that group of people, they're very savvy. And you need to look at the asset allocation. The asset allocation gravitates around immovable properties, foreign currency holdings, in also offshore assets.
So what you're saying is there's no idle, corrupt money lying out there, and we expect to collect all the 1,000 shilling
We've been
notes.
made to believe that they start, and the volume of the quantum is very big.
Okay.
And I beg to differ. And let's wait and see the results.
Okay.
Well, the announcements.
So what you're saying is on Wednesday, when this the Central Bank of Kenya governor actually tells us what is collected, we need to look out for two things: how much has been collected vis-a-vis what has been reported in the statements. If they're at par, then there's no consideration thereafter. But if there's actually a differential, it could have an impact on inflation at that point in time.
Yeah.
Either inflation could have been overstated or understated depending on the results that come out on Wednesday.
Yes.
Okay, so that's Wednesday is a very key day.
It's a very, very key day.
Okay.
And I think that if the collection, the performance should actually be 100%.
Is that what you're expecting?
Yes.
Okay.
And that should actually be what we should expect, the public should expect.
Yes.
Because if you're saying that we have 200 million notes out there, we should be able to actually bring back the 200 million
or
and in
account
exchange issue the new notes, 200 million equivalent.
And how many notes are we issuing? Do you have a sense?
Well, they should actually replace. It's 100% replacement.
100%
if you have 220 million
okay.
notes circulating,
Yes.
you should be able to replenish the entire 200.
Okay,
Yes.
interesting. So we have a couple of things we're looking out for. That's Wednesday. We want to see what was the level of collection vis-a-vis what had the record said was in circulation. What other considerations then do you think the central bank needs to do over and above some of these key things that it has done in the last couple of weeks?
I think also the fiscal policy, the fiscal space is also something.
So fiscal is government spending, tax and revenue.
Tax and revenues.
Okay.
It's something that they did a bit of hinting in the monetary policy communique, but I think it's a very, very, because now the acting Treasury Cabinet Secretary has rolled out some what I call fiscal consolidation.
But the only 2% savings.
Yeah, it's 2.5%, 6%. But it's still a space that they need to. I think that the government will still be very aggressive on the fiscal side.
On the fiscal side.
This will continue to impact monetary policy making.
So when you say they will be aggressive on the fiscal side, is it that they will be aggressive on spending or they'll be aggressive on tax collection? Because the sentiment we're actually seeing now, and especially from the pronouncements from the legislature last week, element of excess tax that's going to increase. If they actually roll out the new framework, we'll see a jump up to 21% collection on excise, particularly on alcohol and cigarettes. Now we've also seen a review of the excise tax affiliated with the gambling companies, and as a consequence we've seen 2 of the foremost companies close shop. So how will they balance it? Because on one end you're saying it's about 2% savings on expenditure, yet the gap is already pretty high. Then do we expect to see aggressive tax collection? Yes,
we actually like to see aggression in terms of tax policy, tax environment, and we've already seen it.
Yes.
You've seen some tax, certain items being hiked, for instance, excise duty, and you've seen the betting companies crying for and closing shop.
So is that good then for the economy?
Away from that, I'll get back to, away from that, even the tax measures that the Treasury has outlined in the current fiscal year's budget, there's a bit of aggression in terms of personal tax, income tax, corporation tax.
Okay.
Yes.
So just expect that there's just be a huge element of taxation.
And even apart from the taxation policy, if you look at the spending side, look at the spending. We've outlined a 3 trillion shilling spending plan that is going to be financed by the 2 trillion shillings tax revenue collections.
So you're saying expect more tax, but then hopefully have minutes from the Central Bank of Kenya.
More tax, more borrowing,
more
which
borrowing.
is very, very, I don't think the economy needs that. I just wonder how the economy will survive with those 2 aggressive stances.
I mean, interesting. I mean, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. We're coming to almost the end of the show. So when you look at the economy from where you sit, you are a director at Callstreet Research and Analytics, which means that you actually evaluate a lot of macroeconomic data. Where do you think we are at this point in time, at least before we close the year, for the final quarter of the year? What are you telling your clients?
In terms of asset allocation?
Asset allocation as well as the economic outlook.
I think what we've seen a lot is a lot of corporates delaying capital expenditures because of uncertainties.
Okay.
People don't know where the economy is headed. Even at the personal level, we've seen savings rates coming down and people opting actually even if you look at the wage growth, it's not even there. Okay. It's being decimated. Now, what we are saying is, and what I'm seeing a lot from my end, is a rush to fixed income.
Okay,
yes.
So you're telling your clients go to fixed income. Do you have a particular preference? Is it the long dated papers? Is it the shorter dated papers?
There we are projecting more on the
media,
mid
so 2 to 5 years. Okay, so
10 years.
invest fixed, give your money to the government, so the government will borrow.
Unless, I think, the last I checked, the 5 and 10-year treasury bonds are considered now short term.
Yes, they are. Yeah. Okay, fine. Thank you so much, Mr. Bodo, for your time. So there you have it. We need to get a little bit more information from the Central Bank of Kenya with regards to minutes once they have their monetary policy committee meetings. The fact that the rate cap still remains really makes the CBR rate inefficient in this kind of economy because it's unable to give sufficient policy signaling to the market participants as far as the money markets are concerned. And over and above this, expect probably higher taxes and increased borrowing from the government. And what really that means for you as an investor is George is saying allocate more money to the fixed income. And that's the 5 or the 10-year papers or anything that's considered short term in your perspective. That was Mr. George Bodo, who's a director at Callstreet Research and Analytics, giving us an overview of some of the events that happened last week and telling you what to do with your money this week. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again tomorrow at 2:30. Good afternoon.